Still what?
Shaving.
Shaving? Yeah, I know. My son's always trying to get me to grow a beard.
Yeah, my Corona beard at the beginning of this whole bloody show, mate, was about 12 weeks in. That's a coupe you've never seen, I can assure you.
I bet.
Okay.
Yeah, I still get a little patchy up around the cheek area.
Yeah, it took me decades for my face to grow in, mate. Don't worry, well into my 40s.
Really?
You should have seen it though, mate. I was a redhead, so I mean, red beard, red head. I mean, I was a ginger. So it's quite a different look. Shit, I better turn that off. Okay.
Alex, are you a redhead? I didn't think so. Coop, you don't look like a redhead.
No, mate, not anymore. It used to be, mate. If I showed you a couple of photos, you'd die laughing.
Really?
Oh,
you use Just for Men now to get rid of it?
Grecian 2000.
Ginger be gone.
Yeah, ginger be gone, exactly.
Ginger be gone.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I've been here 35 years, right? And the other day I'm talking to this bloke, and he said, "So you're one of them fancy Jersey boys, are you?" And I went, "What do you mean fancy Jersey boys? That Jersey accent of yours." I went, "You sound like a Jersey boy?" I'm like, "Wow." I said, "I've had Boston before and a couple of others, but never fancy Jersey boy."
Oh my God, you had Boston too?
Yeah, Boston, mate. Sales. Great.
True.
It's funny how it all sounds a little similar to that Australian twang.
Someone doesn't
park the car. Oh, is that it? Car? Is that the...
Yeah, it's park.
Yeah, no, ours is park the car. But we shorten everything to anything that's got an ing in the end or mess. Like Christmas is always Chrissy, and you're going for a drink, you're going to the pub. I mean, it's not to the hotel. Everything is just shortened and condensed, and the rhyming slang. If you want to have a captain's, okay, I'll stop. I know, guys. It's all good.
Got everything working?
Technology works.
It's not too bad.
Good. That's good. I mean, it's all about disruption and chaos and accelerated happenings at the moment. So why not mix it up? Yeah, I mean, I really do look at it like that. We were talking the other day about it. I mean, it's out of chaos comes a lot of creativity and accelerated innovation, it seems, you look back through history. And we've certainly got that going on now with just so many things and so many verticals. It's not just about the health; it's the auto industry or retail or restaurants. And I was trying to buy some gym equipment, some weights, and like a yoga mat and stuff like that. I tore my hamstring here recently, and
I can see you doing some yoga, Allan.
Oh yeah, I thought you'd like that. It's the new me, mate. It's it's like 2020. Let's have a pivotal change in everything in my life. But you can't get anything, guys. Even online. And then I reached out to Australia, and it was the same thing down there. People have been driven internally back into these localized situations where a lot of things are generated around the house. From fitness.
Why can't you get orders in from Amazon?
I don't know. I mean, this was a couple of weeks ago when I was talking about it, but I was specifically looking just for some hand weights, and just people have same thing as the car industry. Factory stopped manufacturing goods here in the US, and then anything that was coming from overseas was either delayed or so much stuff came out of China. Some of the companies that I've started to talk to, there's a little bit of the boycott going on there, that if it comes out of Vietnam or the Philippines or Thailand, that's great. But people have had a little bit of a pushback against the Chinese products. So, a lot of those things that, barbells and weights and stuff like that, that's where they came from. So, anyways.
Well, plus you're in California, so maybe that makes it even more difficult right now.
Yeah, it is kind of weird out here. I got to admit. I mean, I think when we started to talk about things yesterday, I mean, the weirdness seems to go from the north to the south. When March came along and we decided to lock down in certain states and counties and things, San Francisco was the first one, and then it followed to LA, and then down here to Orange County where I am, and then down to San Diego. But to touch on the auto side of it there, I mean, you had San Francisco County say dealerships are closed, everything's closed, service, parts, sales, done. They went in early, they came out late. Los Angeles followed suit, but they didn't do it quite as soon. Mm-hmm. And they also, at an earlier period, came out and said, no, service and parts is open, you can get your vehicles worked on. And then Orange County, quietly and unbeknownst, I guess, to the government, because they didn't want it kept quiet, the 120 dealers here in this association said, we're staying open. And they stayed open for sales and service through the whole period. And the corresponding changes in attitude, San Francisco's sales for those 90 days and foot traffic was down over 80%. LA was down 60%. Orange County, which is only an hour away from downtown, right? From my place in Newport Beach to downtown LA is 1 hour. They were only down 30%. So 80, 60, 30% based upon the severity of the counties under the state mandates as to what you should or shouldn't do, really impacted business. Mm-hmm. Even like last night, I was with a friend of mine. His wife is a major HR director, an EVP at one of the big shopping malls here in Southern California, in Orange County, let's say. We won't name them. But interestingly, they're seeing a lot of traffic from LA down into Orange County for shopping. And her husband runs a luxury car dealership, and he's seeing the same thing. He said it's interesting to see this influx, if they look historically through the CRM, where the ups are coming from. And she's saying it's the same in the shopping centers. People are, for whatever reason, LA's got it really bad with the coronavirus, and the deaths are higher there, but that's also relative to aged care facilities and everything else that is tied up around this. But this, I don't know, like I said, the craziness of COVID is driving people to the point that they'll jump in a car and they'll go 30, 40, 50, 60 minutes to another location to shop because they feel safer, or
they don't have anything better to do.
Yeah. Or that they don't have the inventory, up there. I mean, that's the one thing I know with, my guys here. I mean, this last month was a record month. My local guy that I used to work with, I mean, we're partners in the business. He had his best month ever last month. Single guy. I mean, he sold over 120 cars, new and used. Over 100 of them new. But it's, he is selling everything that he can get. And because they've cleaned out the inventory backlog that was there for 60, 90, 120 days, had nothing. If they sold through that, now it's kind of like he said, he's getting he's getting a purer mix of inventory of what people really want.
Well, Allan, we should probably clarify that, because 120 cars doesn't sound impressive until you say this is one guy.
Yeah, it's one guy.
Yeah.
I mean, like we talked yesterday, his name's Paul Whitehead. Paul classifies himself as the fleet manager at John Gray's Orange Coast Dodge, Chrysler and Jeep and Harbour Hula, Costa Mesa. But he's not selling fleet. It's fleet tail. It's where we started, it's where I started in the business. A couple of fleet guys that were doing some genuine fleet, but fleet also included me going and getting business from local plumbers and electricians and retail stores where I handed out my card walking the streets in the mid 80s. And I built a clientele that were really commercial sales to those entities, but they were buying personal cars. And that's what Paul's done. He stayed in it for 15 years. I mean, it doesn't take it up, doesn't do any internet leads, wasn't that part of it when we joined up. And he's worked the same PMA for 40 odd years. So yeah, 110 cars new, and the rest are a small mix of used and such like. It's just repeat business that is now generationally extended. He sold cars to the grandparents of some of the people he's selling cars to today, and they were young.
Third generation.
30. Yeah, I mean, but it's key, right? I mean, I think that's one of the things when we talk about the digital age of what's happening right now. Dealerships, I always go back to the biggest problem in a dealership is the salesperson. And for this reason, I got into the business, as you know, coming here as a tourist from Australia and didn't have anything else I could do. So an Aussie guy wrote me into the business. I didn't want to do it. My ego got in the way. I came from a completely different background, but I found out I was pretty good at it, and it was a broken system. And I very early was allowed to have control of the whole transaction. Sell the car, do the financing, sell the service plans, be able to accessorize the vehicle. I was a one-stop show, and that's how I, was taught the business, and that's what I continued to go through with it. I had all the opportunity in the world to move up through management and also go to dealer school and things like that. But back in the 80s and the 90s, once I started to sell 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 cars, and then when Paul Whitehead and I teamed up, and we're cranking out over 200 new cars a month.
Yeah, you're making more money than the GM, so why put yourself under that pressure?
But that's exactly it, right? I mean, I'm proud to call myself a car salesman. If someone says, what's your background? I mean, most people don't know what I do or what I've done. Mm-hmm. I mean, but I'm a car guy. I sold cars and built great relationships with customers. We had great customer satisfaction. We had high profitability with the vehicles. We changed the nature of the business to be one where we wanted you to order the car from the factory. So yeah, it was domestic product, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, and we had Nissan and Hyundai at different times too. But most of the time, I mean, I could order the perfect car for a client and have it drop shipped anywhere in the country or to me here in Southern California in Orange County. And we then just put it on a truck and a trailer or drive it to someone's house and put it in their driveway or their business office. And no one did that in the 80s or the 90s. I mean, and
they're barely doing it now.
I was going to say they're still not doing it. Why do you think that is? I mean, what prevents a dealership? I mean, they've got the competition out there, such as Carvana, which, of course, that's pretty much their business model. And it's not something that dealerships can't do. What do you think prevents them or just keeps them from exploring those options?
100 years, well, not 100 years, but, almost 100 years of doing business in a single blinded manner. This is not critical of the dealers, but because it's just what they're conditioned to, and it's what the consumers are conditioned to until they know better. So, my daddy did it this way, my granddaddy did it this way, what? We succeeded. And now, if you're, look at the successful dealerships. If a successful dealership owns the real estate, changes the complexion of how the operation is run, right? You don't have the expense of huge mortgages, but you've got all the capital loans and flooring and inventory charges that you've got. It's this let's bring in that massive inventory. Let's let it sit here. Let's sell people into those cars. Let's push them into those cars. I mean, that was what I always was taught, like, you're wearing a black sweater and a blue shirt there, but if you came in saying you wanted a white sweater and a pink shirt into Nordstrom's, you're going to get it, right? The salesman's not going to say to you, oh, no, you need this. This is what you need to get on, and sell you high pressure. You put you into something else. That's the way the car industry was always built upon. As it morphed from I think maybe this is where we might see this generational change. If you go back to post-World War II in the 40s, car dealerships were almost a cornerstone of the community. They were pretty well respected. It was the banker, the postman, the headmaster, your local car dealer. You were an integral part of the community. People needed a vehicle to drive around, and not everybody had two cars in a family. But where I was going with the answer to that question of, like, why has it not changed? It's just conditioning. And until a dealer has the opportunity to sort of free the reins on their salespeople and give them that ability, I think, to be more interactive with the customer. And that's going back to what I was saying, is that the problem with the industry is salespeople. People don't stay as salespeople. Good salesperson typically is going, let's make him a closer, and then let's make him a sales manager. Oh, and he's decent at that. Let's make him a GSM. Doesn't mean that you've got great man management capabilities. I mean, you're robbing yourself of someone like me that went, hang on, I can work 4.5 days a week and make twice the amount of money that a general manager does. If a dealership has 5 people like that, you don't need the 20 you typically have to sell all those cars, because what's the turnover with the sales staff in the dealership?
Well, Allan, you're getting to a big point that we should make in this conversation too, is profit. So right now, the things are looking pretty good over the last 3 months, but prior to that, the new car grosses in particular were not. They weren't that exciting, and I do believe you're onto something here, and a lot of that is because of the model that we have grown accustomed to over the last nearly 100 years, where it's bring the customer into the showroom and haggle.
Yeah, negotiate.
Yeah, and then everyone's so paranoid that the customer's going to go shop them that they always put them out on, under invoice or invoice less dealer cash or whatever it is, and then some inflated allowance on their trade. And when you're convenient and doing things like you're talking about, it's amazing what kind of profits can be realized.
Yeah.
Well, also they like to get them in the, a dealership likes to get them in the store so they can get them in the box and be able to sell products as well. And of course, the industry has tried to introduce digital retailing. There's a couple different programs out there that allows you to put those products within the shopping cart. But I still see a lot of dealerships opting out of that. So I think a lot of them have that fear that they're going to miss out on some of that back end money by selling products because they're not getting the customer in the door.
So there's a guy. I'm sorry, that just want to point out a prior Refresh Friday guest who has proven this model out this year, and that's Matthew Haken. And his real secret in doing it is that he stopped dividing his dealership up into different areas and different processes, and he brought everyone together under a single process, and everyone does things the same way, and they're very upfront with stuff. And then the salespeople are less of salespeople; they're more just deal makers. So they consult the consumer, they find the right car for them. They usually try to consult them into a lease, so they sound like, and they're scripted, so they sound like they're a concierge on how best to buy this car, and open the customer's mind up to different ideas they weren't thinking about. And then they schedule the F&I disclosure. Sometimes it's the next day, and they'll do it over the phone. And then they schedule the delivery, and they'll deliver the car to the customer's home. And sometimes this can be a 3-day window.
That's when they get the signatures?
Yeah, that's when they get the signatures too.
Well, I mean, that's you nailed it. And the way you nailed it, mate, whereas you said it's a process. And that's the key to this. It is a process. It's a change in mentality. It's a seismic shift in letting go of control because, think about it from guys like us that were car salespeople, that it was all about control. You were yelled at and berated to like, how many phone calls have you made? How many people have you upped? How many appointments do you have? When are they coming in? Get them in the box, just like all the terminology we use, right? Let's put them in a box, 4 walls and a top on it so they can't go anywhere. Throw their keys on the top of the roof to the trade. Now let's hit them with a massive high payment on your contract, a massive down. Tell them your car's worth nothing, and we'll meet somewhere in the middle. And it becomes it's not a negotiation; it's a hostage situation. But really, it was. I mean, I've been there. I mean, where I've actually look. I worked through some guys that worked for Cal Worthington, Ralph Williams, some legendary guys that were insanely visionary with what they did. But there was a group of people that came around it that were the old school from the 60s, 70s as to how you sold cars. This process that you're talking about is exactly what we had and what Paul still does. What Paul still does, 40 years after he first got in the business. It was all over the phone.
Yeah.
That's how we sold. I mean, when I first got onto the business, I used to get the phone book and I just randomly called people around the streets that I lived saying, hey, g'day, I'm the Aussie here, selling cars. Are you interested in buying a car? I'm serious, I did that. A Kiwi.
Well, you can get away with that with the accent. Come on, not everybody has that advantage.
Well, yeah, if you go,
you can fake it, Jeff. Stop pronouncing your R's and say you're from Massachusetts.
Okay.
I want to go back to it, guys. It's the process. We did what you just talked about. You talked to them on the phone. We disclosed the price. When the fax machine came along, now I'm dating myself, you would fax an invoice to somebody and we just pencil it out. This is your purchase price. Here's your payment with what you want done. Here's your interest rate from Chrysler. And if I had them on the phone, we could get all of that done in 15 minutes in the 80s and the 90s, because we'd sit in front of the old blue screen computer that Chrysler used to dump into every office for the credit. We'd punch everything in, it'd run it, blow it, and say, yeah, they're approved. So I could tell them what their payment was to the exact cent, tell them what their trade is. And to your point, if people still wanted to negotiate, Alex, we didn't put them out on a Hummer. We put them out on the exact price of the car that they could buy, knowing what invoice is with full transparency. Gave them a fair value for the car. We weren't trying to steal trades. That wasn't our goal. We were all about volume sales and turn and earn, because we were incentivized that way. And we'd accessorize the vehicle with a discount. We would make their first service appointments for the first 6 months, before we got to big volume. And then when, and this was pre-internet days, pre-computer, but when it came along, we had some early scheduling tools. But we made those first service appointments. I wanted that customer to come back to the dealership for service. Because if I could get my absorption rates up, and I didn't get paid on this, but it's what you talked about with the dealer you referenced. I think Volvo dealer, right? Mm-hmm. You take away the silos. We worked with the business office, the service, the parts, everybody. We weren't siloed as the fleet guys or the internet guys. We actually helped everybody. And if part of how we did that is that we gave away rental service contracts on some of our vehicles to people back in the 90s. Chrysler used to have a $15, believe it or not, was the cost of it, service contract for rental cars. If your car was in overnight, then you got a free rent-a-car. Oh, well, guess what? Every one of our customers was in overnight.
Yeah, exactly.
We had a great relationship with the service department and said, yeah, it's got to be in overnight. Everybody gets a rent-a-car. So we build that connectivity with the community. And going back to it, longevity of tenureship as a salesperson, that's what lets you sell volume numbers of vehicles with the trust of your clientele, where you don't have to sit down and negotiate. If you've had a good experience once with somebody, you're going to go back to it, right? It's like going to a restaurant. Put me in a restaurant where the staff are bad or the food's bad, or they try to hustle me through. I'm not going back there. But put me somewhere where everybody's pleasant, I get great value and service, and I enjoy the experience, I'll be back there.
Well, we've got a conversation on Dealer Refresh right now just around, home deliveries, home remote test drives. And, some of the feedback is, look, we've signed up for the digital retailing services. We've got the at-home test drive button. We've got the buy now, have your car delivered, and consumers just aren't engaging with it. So it's easy for the dealership to go, you know what? We've been offering this for the past 3 or 4 months, and no one's going through the process, at least online. If you look at a lot of the different digital retail solutions out there, and you start seeing, okay, how many consumers are actually going through the whole process. I mean, it's a onesie-twosie number. So I think a lot of times, the dealerships are looking at this, and then they come up with the conclusion, of course, well, this isn't what our consumers want. They still want to come into the dealership because they've sort of placed that test out there to see what happens. And, I'm guilty of it here at this dealership. We've had some type of buy online solution for over 2 years now. We've tried different services. We've had as soon as this came out, I worked with one of my vendors, and we've got like a remote test drive, remote delivery. We've got all the options out there, and speak to that particular salesperson if you want. You can choose the salesperson that you want to work with. And I mean, seriously, the numbers are so low that the average dealership is going to be like, no one wants to communicate with us this way. So why would we take all this, extra effort to try and build out a process around remote deliveries?
So I'm absorbing what you're saying because you've got the actual experience right now at the dealership as well, as opposed to me as somebody that was doing it and my old business partner that's still doing it. I think it goes back to what we're talking about. The consumer's not used to it. This is a seismic shift in how they can test drive a vehicle or buy a vehicle. I mean, that's when we first started to do it, and I do recall this. So like people would go, "What's the catch?" We drop a car for a test drive into someone's house and say, we'll pick it up tomorrow. Everyone's used to, no, you've only got it for 1 hour or 2 hours. And things like that. We try to match the right product to what they were looking for if they haven't driven it. By the same token, we do the typical car thing, like, listen, if you're not near us, just go to another dealership, test drive a bunch of vehicles, and then just call us or come down and we'll sell you the car. And, we negate the test drive experience. But, that being said, mate, it's a communication issue from the dealership to the consumers, and how do you get that to them? It sounds like, when you're talking about customers that say, no, well, they don't want that. Are they customers that are new to the department? Are they repeat customers? Do they have a relationship with a salesperson? Is it?
I would say both.
Yeah. So, for anyone that we were dealing with, once we knew them, was never a problem. Once they validated our process with friends or family with referrals of like, look, call Coop, call Paul. These guys will look after you. They'll drop the car at your house. They did it for me. That second party validation, like a Yelp review before Yelp was around, right? Of just like, you can trust these guys. They're good. If they're going to drop the car there, you're not beholden to it. I mean, we weren't. I don't know. Obviously, we're talking to the US here, but here in California, if you didn't deliver the vehicle at the dealership, the consumer had a 3-day unwind period, right?
Correct. Yep.
And dealers are like, well, we're never not going to have someone come to the dealership because I cannot afford to have a 3-day unwind on my hands. And we go, well, no, that's not how we operate. I mean, we'll put it there. I mean, if they don't buy that car, it's still not titled and registered. It's just out on a BCA, borrowed car agreement, which was faxed or, and to the point that, as long as if we knew where you lived and we knew the car was, that was our trust factor. People were like, well, I could steal the car. I went, well, I know where you live. I mean, you're the last person that got it. And you said, we'll get it.
That was one of my other things. I'm sure there's a lot of dealerships out there because you were mentioning 24-hour test drive, drop it off at their house, pick it up the next day. I'm sure there's a lot of GMs out there who struggle with that.
Oh, totally. I mean, it's, different horses for different courses. I mean, I'm in Orange County.
Well, there's one thing that dealers. Oh, I'm sorry, Allan. I'm talking over there. But there's one thing that dealers have proven in the 100-ish years, or almost 100 years, as you said, that they've been around. It's that the consumer will follow the process that the dealer lays in front of them. So if your process is to do a test drive at the customer's home or place of business, or to do the delivery at the customer's home or place of business, they'll get on board with it. They'll do it.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, I'll give you another one that, in the 80s and the 90s, we were appraising cars sight unseen, and we had the customer do it themselves, because, if they're 10, 15, 20 miles away or 5 miles, it didn't matter. We just say, well, I'll give you a number on your car. And they went, well, don't you need to see it? I'm like, no. I'm like, and we'd either, fax days, we'd fax them a checklist. Internet, it was like, send them an email. And I'm talking, remember, guys, we were one of AutoVitel's first customers in mid-1990, late 94, 95. So things were that 5-year period to where I stayed in to 2000 before I went to CRM and building these other companies. This is that experience I'm talking about there. Mm. But it's the same now. Paul Whitehead still does the same thing. You have the customer describe the car and tell them of like, look, don't, if there's a cigarette burn underneath a floor mat, tell me about it, because if it turns up here and I see it, then the price won't be as I quote you. But if you tell me exactly what your car is like right now,
yeah,
I'll give you a number I'll buy the car for. Yeah. And I said, and maybe more when you get here. But we would give them ACV for the vehicle. And it was that process, that seismic change I talk about,
that's just another one of those. That's another piece of the process that dealerships really struggle with. They're just so used to getting the customer to come in to do the professional appraisal. But every time I've worked with the customer and just given a price, hey, I wouldn't expect you to purchase my car if it isn't what we've described it to be. And I hope that you wouldn't expect me to purchase your car as a trade-in if it isn't what you described it to be.
Yeah.
So, it's a pretty easy objection to overcome. But again, dealerships are just, they're still used to just doing things the same old way. And they don't take the time to actually build a process around it.
Yeah. So, again, process, and disciplines, but also trust in your employees, right? So going back to salespeople, they're the cornerstone of the foundation that drives the operations in the dealership. And how many of them? What's the average longevity of tenureship for those guys? Just like we're talking about, I'm a professional car salesman. That's how I viewed myself in the end, right? I used to hide away from the fact when I started it, but then I suddenly realized, hang on, everybody needs a car. This is a great industry. There's some amazing people in it.
Well, and sales are sales. If you want to be, one of the top professions out there, income-wise, is sales.
Yeah, but but my point is that the dealerships, us as an industry, I feel like we don't look after the sales, but no one's figured it out. How do you get somebody to be an awesome salesperson that can make a great living and have a family life? Right. I was bell to bell 7 days a week out here, and I let myself be conditioned by the process to do that. We didn't have a shutdown time. A number of cars I sold here in the 80s at 1 o'clock or 1:30 in the morning with the last few people that came through was ridiculous before I made that transition to, the fleetail side of the world. But it's, I'll compare it
sounds
to
like a party in the 80s.
Hey, and an offline conversation, we can have some really great. The book and a movie in there with the number of people.
Doesn't need to be offline. Go ahead.
Hey, so this show is going to be messy.
You mentioned your friend, the one's been selling 120 cars a month over the years, because he's been doing the same thing year after year for 20, 30 years. Has he injected any type of technology into his process that's helped him out?
It's a great question, mate. And for him, outside of dealerships being computerized and from when we first started, like I said, thermal fax machine paperwork were in the F&I department were always fun. We predated that. No, he hasn't, mate. He doesn't. For someone like him, he's all in Orange County, so the dealerships are all within a 15-mile radius that he's worked for. 5 of them in 40 odd years, maybe 6. Or it's a lot of going back and forth to others. And the reason for that is pretty simple. You know, if a GM came in and changed things around and said, I'm not going to pay this guy this much money, or, you know, if you want me to take your dealership, I did it with him through twice, and I did it 3 times myself before that. The more successful I became, the more constraints that the dealership eventually wanted to put on me, because
you're making too much money.
Right, that I could work so efficiently and effectively and make the money I was making and work half the time that the GM did and not have the responsibilities that he did. So my relationships were always with the owner. And to go back to Paul, because he was 40 years in the same PMA, selling the same brand, Dodge, Chrysler, and Jeep, just the fact that he's the professional salespeople, he's had that following of people that have continued to stay with him and grow. And, you know, when we teamed up, I mean, some of the people we sold cars to were, you know, I've got an Aussie mate that played on the PGA Tour. I sold him a car. That led to 100-odd sales through the PGA and networks and family. The same with the Lakers. Janie Buss came onto the lot one day, and I sold her a truck, didn't even know who she was because she, you know, because she's got a different married name. That led to us selling Lakers and entertainment industry people in Hollywood that we didn't know, because she and them then said, hey, if you need a Dodge Diesel, or if you need a Dodge Viper, or you need this or that, these are the guys to call. So very quickly, kind of like Paul, you had not just the face-to-face fleet tail, as I'll call it, you know, direct, but it's just a retail customer. You also then had the leasing companies and the brokers that worked for those celebrities that didn't want to go to it. A great point, right? He's got brokers that represent the entertainment industry, that those people are never walking into a dealership to buy a car in most cases. They have a third party.
What vehicles are they buying that Dodge, Jeep, and Chrysler carry?
Viper.
I mean, I would hope most of the vehicles he sells are probably Jeep or you know, trucks.
Dodge Darts.
Dodge Darts.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, I won't mention the names because you know, it's his. Not I don't have the permission to, but there's 2 guys that I know that bought Dodge Challengers.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, and when you look at the price of these things, mate, I mean, that's, I guess, when I go out and get this, a what, a $75,000, $80,000 Charger? I mean, or a
that's
Charger.
That's the exception.
Yeah, but I mean, these are the sort of things that they're buying. I mean, or like, you know, Janie, you know, she's big into sort of horses and riding. She wanted a truck to pull the horse trailer. That's how I met her. And the weird thing was, it was raining. It was the middle of winter. It's 6 o'clock at night. I'm leaving, and I'm trying to direct the salespeople that are hunkering under the eaves with a cigarette and some coffee to come and talk to this lady that's walking on, because I'm going home and I don't take ups. But they all walked inside. I took the up. I talked to that, led to hundreds of sales years later. So that's where coming back to this process thing, right? Build a relationship with people, have longevity of tenureship with the same product and PMA. Dealers do that just because it's the essence of their business. They have a PMA that is assigned to them. They invest in the infrastructure of the dealership and the community. You know, we became involved with Feed America, food banks. I've done that my whole career, Andy, because I'm passionate about that. You know, legacy clubs, Apex, all different sorts of things that we might get involved in or sponsor a Little League team. You do that as a dealer, as an owner, as a management. But this, what I'll call the itinerant churn of salespeople, is what costs the dealership profitability, repeat sales. Because, you know, again, how do we fix the problem to make people want to be salespeople for their whole life? The number of people I know making $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year that are car salespeople because they've stayed doing what I did.
Very few.
It's very few, but it's the best life in the world, you know.
There's a great comment from Chris Leslie, and that falls right in line with what you're saying, Allan, and gives us a little added perspective. But he said, let me add this to the broadcast too. Sales are order takers because most of us don't have any training programs in place to teach our people how we want things done. Mainly because none of us have any idea how we really want things done.
True that.
So.
that's a great comment, actually. And there's been a few dealers that I've known over the years that have said, "Hey, will you come in for a couple of days as friends?" I mean, it's not my business. I don't do that stuff. But they went, "Can you come in for a couple of days and take a look at the dealership and tell me how you think we might be able to change things around and talk to my managers and so forth." And once you get into a dealership, you could smell it 100 miles away. Is it siloed? Is it toxic? Does service hate parts? Does new cars hate used cars? Do the people get on with the business office? If there's no harmony in there, if there's not a team effort, it doesn't work. And I think that's the culture in the dealerships that's so important. I mean, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I mean, it's a Drucker comment. And Steve Cannon, that used to be the CEO of Mercedes-Benz, actually had a whole program around that, how he changed the culture within dealerships around the country. They went to the dealerships and went, how many of the staff have actually driven a Mercedes? The number was astounding, how many people work there. Forget the salespeople. We know they drive them. But service, parts, repair, mechanics and stuff. But so many people had never driven the product that they sell. And they also asked, how happy are you working here? Ecstatic? Okay, it's just a job. Trying to find another job. They did blind surveys, changed the whole culture around bringing people together as a team, letting them smell and drive and experience the product that they represent as a dealership. If you bring unity into play, I mean, I'm a big rugby guy, right? That's what I love as a sport. And 15 people on a team, you can't, everybody talks about the quarterback being the star of an NFL team. In rugby, it used to be the halfback, as we call it, because that's the little general on the field that directs the play. But there is no star in amongst all this stuff. You might have inherent leaders, but you're as strong as your weakest link in any organization. And that's why everybody, why we have weakest and strongest links too, because there is no doubt that weakest link has some really great strong points. But how do you sort of nurture and change or strengthen or protect the weakest links and bring everybody together as a team? It's a key component in a dealership. Going back to the
usually just put the weakest link in the internet department. Sorry.
Well, yeah. I mean, and so we say that right now. I mean, I sort of chuckle these days when someone says, "Yeah, my internet department," and I go, "It's 25 years since the internet came along, and everything is based around mobile, the internet, online." I mean, I used to joke about people. I mean, I loved it when I'd have salespeople come back and say, "This is a propeller head. They were on their phone in the car researching prices. I don't want to deal with them anymore. You guys deal with them in the fleet internet department." The access to information, I mean, there's salespeople like you. It goes back to what you were talking a little bit there, Alex, of product specialists or consultants or concierge, people that nurture the relationship versus the process. I think that we start to talk about with BDCs and things like that. Is the process in some dealerships that there are people that just sit behind four walls and take all of the calls and set appointments and build a relationship to give the people the information to get them to the dealership to work with the consultant to ultimately get them in the car and get them out of there. Or is it that no, it's an open dealership and any phone call that comes in, you've got salespeople that have got an average tenureship of 6 years and all the product knowledge in the world, and they can handle the deal from the beginning to the end. That's typically maybe a boutique luxury store, or maybe you've got some pretty advanced dealers out there that have that luxury of keeping that retention rate so high. I just can't stress that enough. I mean, if you've got a sales force that's got an average age of 6 years employment, you've taken those people that you've put in leases at 3 or 4 years, and the cash purchase buyers and the finance buyers have come back for that recycling. And how do you nurture not just that sale with those people, a good salesperson, look at the household that they can influence.
Yeah.
How many?
So with all these dealerships signing up for these digital retail solutions, especially at the beginning of COVID here, what's your opinion around that? I mean, you've worked with quite a few technology vendors out there, CRM. You were with One Command for quite a while. You're still working with a lot of dealerships. Like, well, where do you see that going? I mean, we've had this conversation many times here on the show, but I'm just interested in your views on that.
So I got to plead a little bit of ignorance here. Obviously, COVID. I was in Detroit, New York in March, and I came back and got sick and got tested. Supposedly didn't have it, but had all the symptoms. And the dealerships I have been in may have been limited right now, and I haven't done a deep dive into these digital services that the digital retailing companies that are out there. I'm about to. I think that and you guys have got a better idea, and the audience that I'm talking to has got a better idea here, or an invite to go and look at it. Where are the people that are building these digital retailing services companies coming from? What experience have they had in the retail world or the OEM world, or is it just vendor world? I've crossed over from my background for out of Australia was the equivalent of West Point to Roche Pharmaceuticals to the finance industry tied around the car industry for 5 years before I came out here, and then 15 years retail, and then we had Autotown as the CRM company, and then there's 6 of us that started One Command, and then the rest of it. My background sort of touches retail, OEM, and vendor, and the guys that I know that come from the OEM side, I look at it this way. Car people, we're great at selling cars and knowing what our customers want and the product and the community. The OEMs are really good at doing national advertising and branding and building cars, but they don't know how to sell cars.
Well, they are now mandating digital retailing solutions, so that should tell you everything you need to know right there.
Yeah, well, exactly. So to the point of like, where's the basis of those companies in their DNA? And that genetic strain that they have of auto industry. How much of it's retail? How much of it's OEM? How much of it is just vendor? I mean, we've all been around and we've become vendors. We've gone and built companies because we've got expertise around certain things or think we have new expertise. I'm all about the data and the consumer behavior and the monitoring of that foot traffic and the web traffic and every other virtual lens that you can put on the consumer right now. So going back to what you're talking about, Jeff, it's the qualifications of those digital retailing companies that I would probably want to question if I'm a dealer. Like, so what's your background? Where's your experience? Where's your study? Show me your white papers. What's the real world experience? Or how many of these people are Johnny-come-lately says that this is the next big thing? The internet came along and I was called an idiot because I was going to sell cars on the computer. No one's going to do that, It's what we were told, right? And it changed. We had CRM come along, we had BDCs, we had all these processes. It's always evolving. And I think that's where we are right now, is that we're at this inflection point, the intersection of massive change in the industry as it moves forward here. We haven't seen
like what kind of changes are you predicting?
Consolidation of dealers.
Okay.
I think that there's we're seeing it. I mean Cliff Banks does a great job of reporting on it. There's more and more of that. We saw it with the global financial meltdown. A lot of dealers that closed up, shut down, or were bought out. I'm seeing a little bit of that seismic change coming out of Australia because Honda is now dictating down there. I mean, there's no franchise laws in place like you have here to protect the dealers down there. So they've decided to say every Honda is the same price across the country, and you only advertise it at this price, and you can only sell it at this price. So we're almost getting to a Saturn model from the 90s, and there's other OEMs starting to follow them down there. We had General Motors Holden, as it was called, General Motors Holden, with the dealerships that have been around since 1948 down there. With the closure of the manufacturing plants down there and the branding and the building of Holden vehicles, General Motors pulled the rug from under, all the dealers down there and just said, you're no longer dealers, you're closed up.
Wow.
There's lawsuits going back and forth about payouts and stuff.
Why Australia is getting turned back into like a penal colony or something, it seems like.
According to the news.
Only Victoria, mate, because they had a problem with the equivalent of the governor. We call him the premier down there. He did not use the police and the military to lock down and secure hotels with returning international visitors. So if you came back to Australia, no matter who you were, you went into a mandatory 14-day lockdown at hotels that you couldn't move out of. Every other state used the police force and the military to help manage that process. Victoria, specifically Melbourne, the city, they used private security companies who then outsourced it to other security companies who had people that weren't trained, who didn't have a process to follow. And there was some fraternization between guests and security staff that then led to families becoming involved. The next thing you know, it blew up to being, 90% of the deaths in Australia are now out of Victoria. We went from being less than 100 deaths 3 months ago to close to 1,000, and they've all occurred in Victoria.
Wow.
And the same stats as here, aged care facilities with older people or people that have inherent comorbidity issues, be it diabetes or obesity.
Which is a lot of people here in the States.
Yeah, well, we're the same, but mate, Australia's the same. I mean, people used to think, I came here to California when I first came here. I thought everybody ate salads, roller skated, and just, just rode bikes in the sun. It was California. And then
California's got the best fast food on the planet.
Yeah, it does. It's fantastic, mate. But Australia has followed the US. I mean, the prevalence of fast food and unhealthy diets and lack of exercise have affected the country, and especially with...
Yeah, I would have figured they're a little bit more healthy down there.
Yes and no. I mean, it's a global... That's the world we live in, right? It's globalized.
Yeah.
I mean, everything. You can go into any shopping center anywhere in the world, and you're going to be able to buy a Louis Vuitton handbag or a pair of Levi's jeans, or, it doesn't matter whether it's Latin America, Europe, Australia, Asia, or here. Everything changed in this last 25 years.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of change, there was a question we promised we'd ask today. That was in regards to the election. So since we're on this non-triggering topic already, what do you think is going to happen here in November, leading up to and after?
I think it's getting it's getting very interesting. I don't know. I mean, I've got maybe it's the perspective of being an Australian that's lived here for 35 years and still follow Australian politics and have a very strong interest in global politics. We've sort of grew up down there that way, mate. To maybe frame this for you, we're so far away from everything that we felt like everything happened everywhere else but Australia. We're just a big island in the southern hemisphere. That again, I mean, you live on an island. Islands inherently cause different sort of insular views, maybe in some people, and others it's expansionist. But we always look to America as the leader of the free world, and America's hauled our ass out of the fire once. Battle of the Coral Sea, World War II. I mean, we'd all be eating sushi and speaking Japanese if it wasn't for MacArthur and the Battle of the Coral Sea and the US troops coming into Australia. I get this. Well, I'm going to just put it out this way. Before someone tries to pigeonhole me, which a bunch of people do, I'm an entrepreneurial capitalist. Sorry, I'm an entrepreneurial capitalist, but with socialist tendencies in that I believe that every kid in America to the high school class of year 12 should have that education. Everybody has that right to get that education. You don't know where the next great mind is going to come from just because he's born black, yellow, white, Hispanic, into ultra rich or bottom of the barrel, hardly getting by. If you've got a great education system in place, then you never know what comes of it, and you build upon that. The second one is health. You got to keep your population healthy. And that's the kids. I mean, the future of America is in the hands of the kids today. So why wouldn't we want to give them every possible advantage?
That's what makes it so scary right now.
Yeah. I mean, and the third one around that is food scarcity, guys. I mean, COVID's blowing it up, but there's 58 million Americans that don't necessarily know where their next meal is coming from. And I know through Feed America and people like, Alex Vedder's wife used to be the CMO at Feed Americas, and I was, like I said, always involved with the food banks, even here in Orange County. And that's what blew me away, is that in my neighborhood here, I'm in Newport Beach, guys, there are people that are struggling to put the meals on the tables for some of their families, especially enhanced by COVID. And if we don't take care of that, then we got a problem.
Yeah, for sure.
And then
I don't think that, I think that's something a lot of people it's easy to overlook.
Yeah, but to go back to your question, what I think is going to happen, I think right now, mate, my read on is that 50 days out, you've got two leaders of political parties that have rabid fans and rabid haters. And there's certainly, I know it around here, there's a silent majority that are just still waiting or don't want to talk about it. I've got people that are going to cross party lines. I've got a couple of Republican people here in the street that cannot stand Trump, but believe in the Republican Party. So they will still vote for the Republican Party, but they're being very adamant that they're not voting for Trump.
Yeah.
That's not the way your political system's set up. It's all about electoral colleges and not about the popular vote. So, you're voting in a president, you're not voting in a party.
Yeah.
And then I've got Democrats that are going to cross party lines as well. These are business people here in California. I mean, you guys know where I live. I've got an interesting group of people around me, and their concern is that what's going to happen with taxes. They identify as Democrats, but they're business people. They're entrepreneurs. And when I listen to them talk about the fact that the legislation that's been passed against them as business owners for workers' compensation, insurances, and different things, there's the inequality in the levels of it. When you hear people saying, "I'm getting out of California, I can't afford to do business here anymore," that's their comment to me.
Yeah, there's quite a few.
Yeah.
That I follow.
And they said to me, yeah, I'm Democrat, but I'm voting Republican. And then I've got the other side, guys. I got the others going the other way, saying, yeah, I'm Republican, but I can't.
Do you think that'll have any influence on dealerships in California? How could it not?
Because of the tax dollars, the dealers, I think, still, if you look upon dealerships in California, they're the driver of one of the biggest sources of sales tax. Look, that's how Fletcher Jones got the land he did down there. I mean, Fletcher was going to, when Jim Slemons went out of business in Newport Beach, Fletcher came in and was going to buy land in Anaheim and rebuild a dealership there because it was such a great tax advantage for him. Well, then basically the story is that the city of Newport said, we'll give you the land for, next to nothing at the end of the Back Bay there if you build the marquee #1 Mercedes dealership in the country at the time. Mm-hmm. And he did. Well, they sell over 1,000 cars a month there, new, right?
Yeah.
Tax dollars to the city of Newport Beach are huge. So the only people I think it's going to hurt dealership-wise are the marginal players. I look back to, I've been through a couple of different recessions in Australia and here, and, I was selling cars during Desert Storm, so I saw the impact of that. Saw the GFC and what that did to, One Command. We had Chrysler as a corporate account. They went bankrupt. They stopped paying. We had dealers. I mean, we had 6,500, 7,000 dealers with One Command. And all of them go, oh, I got no money. Can't pay. It's the guys that are not going to make it through this one if it turns and gets dark, which I believe it's going to get a little hairy here in the next 6 to 8 months, 12 months. The guys that weren't paying attention to their business. People were making great money and thinking everything was good, but how much was leaking through the floor? And they didn't see. So when, as we saw here, COVID came along, the crisis happened. What's the first thing dealers did? Reduced staff, laid people off, put them on furlough, different things. The Nissan store across the road from Paul basically laid everybody off, took all the salespeople out. Sorry, it was Nissan or Mitsubishi? Nissan. And it just was the owner, the general manager, and the fleet manager, internet manager that took all the calls. And they found out they could sell as many cars as they were with 3 people. They were overworked. But that became another problem. They tried to get some of the salespeople to come back that they put off. And they went, are you kidding me? This is the problem here. There were people that dual income households that went on to the PPP money and the unemployment money, and they were getting $4,100 a month each. These people have never had.
That was probably more money than what they were making when they were working.
Yeah. And there's, again, talking to people out there, there's a little bit of a crunch coming. A lot of those people took that $4,100. You still have to pay tax on, a certain amount, right, once you meet the threshold. But they took all of that money in and spent it as though it was, net money, not gross. The number of dealerships that I spoke to, guys, that the people using the cards, their unemployment money to come and buy vehicles through that 90-day period was huge.
Really?
And across the country. Yeah, there's a couple of studies I've got. I can share some stuff with you. I sat on some webinars that people top tier, especially by credit score, top tier, 750 plus, they didn't really affect them. Some people got into the market, were pulled in because why would they go and spend 80 grand on a pickup truck or a new Grand Cherokee or a Escalade or things like that when they could get 84 months at 0%. So they bought that pulled some people in there. The middle tier, there was some movement there, not a lot, but a lot of people sat on the sidelines like, am I still going to have a job? I don't need a car right now. I don't. This is not just such a great opportunity for me. But the bottom tier, the subprime, those unemployment checks, guys, the amount of money that's been spent with some of the studies and people that I deal with these other companies, retail-wise, was through the roof. And that's where the movement was in the dealerships. Subprime, the 600 below, people that hadn't been able to cobble together $3 or $4 grand before for a down payment on a relatively inexpensive used car. And especially if it's a dual income family that had $8,200 or $8,400 coming in, let's get a car. I got $6 grand. And,
so what you're saying is we might have quite a few repossessions coming up here in the next couple of years.
I think we've definitely got that coming. I mean, we can't
sooner than a few years.
Yeah, we've had. This is like an epic low tide that we've never seen before, right? Where we've had a health pandemic, a financial crisis, unemployment that spiked so high, and we've got the most divisive election in history, or modern history, on our hands here. And we've also got a battle with China around so many things. And it's not just America. It's, that's the same thing in Australia. I don't want people to think I'm bashing China here, but, they put levies against beef and barley and seafood and wine from Australia because Australia led the push to have an investigation into Wuhan to find out why and how and when did it really start with this thing. So the circling back to your question, mate, dealerships, I think some dealerships are going to fall by the wayside over the next 12 months that maybe get pushed a little bit harder by their competition. All the guys I know around here, mate, they're making record profit right now. So it's going to set them up great. But what do they learn from that and how do they take it through? Is this a bump? We're back. I don't know where the SAR is going to actually end up because, I think the election's going to have once the election's over, there's a lot of rhetoric that's just going to be taken off the table, right? I mean, there isn't anything to talk about. We'll have the current president or a new president.
Yeah.
And what are the changes that are going to come with that?
Depends on how many ballots they find on January 19th.
Exactly.
God.
I mean, hey, we touch on politics. I never understand, guys, why it's not like Australia. It's compulsory to vote in Australia. And what that means is that No one's standing over your shoulder when you vote, but it's compulsory to turn up to the polling house and vote. Every election in Australia is held on a Saturday, guys. It's not held during the week. So everybody can go on a weekend. And what you do is you turn up to the polling houses, be it at a school or a shopping centre or wherever. They have the electoral roll there. They tick off that Allan Cooper has come in to vote. I walk into the booth, I've got my ballot, and I can put a smiley face on it, a line through it, or I can tick off my, who I'm voting for or preferences. We have over 95% of people that post legitimate votes. The donkey vote or the illegible votes is negligible. And again, that's a process and conditioning. I'm the age I am, and from when I was 18, I was great. I couldn't wait to vote. I had a social conscience.
I'd vote as soon as I could.
Yeah, I mean, so I think you guys have seen it. I mean, less than 54% of the U.S. population has voted in the last 40 years for elections. So
yeah, I thought presidential. I thought it was like close to under 40%.
It might be under 40, mate. I looked at it. I looked it up. I'll send it to you and have a look at it because I want to make sure I had my stats right when I quoted that before. But I think that's the case. It's a big statement, because half of the people we're having dialogues with probably haven't voted, but everybody's got an opinion. But so I get disappointed when I hear.
Thank God for Facebook.
I've got other people that say, "I'm not going to vote, protest vote. I don't like either of them." There's no win there. You get a lot of people doing that, then you got a problem.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to hearing those opinions, that's what I was talking about. Facebook there.
Yeah.
Hopefully, Refresh Friday serves as a nice little escape from those things.
It's been good, guys. I mean, I enjoy it. I mean, a couple other things to just mention here. I mean, I think we're in the middle of the next big revolution, and a health pandemic in a different way. So, just a Coop comment.
Well, when you say revolution, I assume you're referring to an industrial or information revolution. Exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly where we're at. You can roll AI into that, the machine learning. Everybody has become very vocal. I mean, we all live now with a mobile device in our hand that lets us become an instant critic or a journalist or a publisher or a shit stirrer. That just create habit. Yeah.
Well, there could be.
But it's in a good way and a bad way, man. Because I listened to a futurist talk recently, and he worked for Verizon for many years around this side of the world, and he's got a couple of kids that he's kept the mobile phone out of their reach. They're 6 years old. They know how to use a computer, but he went, "You're not having a mobile phone," and he said the social interaction that he has with his kids and their behaviors when he's in public or with friends is the antithesis of these kids' friends. They are engaged. They grew up like we did. I mean, I love these things and I hate them. I mean,
agreed.
Well, can I throw a different theory at you? So, what if we're at the end of the information revolution? So, we could argue that the information revolution began with the invention of the radio, because that was when we could start to really push or give a single person a voice across the masses very quickly. And this, revolutions, when it comes to these things across history from a historical perspective, they take decades to run their course. And maybe this is the final chapter in it.
I think there's probably one more step, mate.
Maybe.
And it's not one that I like personally, but I start to think I'm sounding like my dad. If you get to my age and you start to question, well, that sounds too frightening or scary. My dad, you can remember, he's 87. He still remembers buggies and carts and horses in Australia. Yet the highlight of my dad's life, guys, was when we put a man on the moon.
he never thought he would see that. And that was the first big leap, right? And we haven't leapt anywhere, beyond the space shuttle and things like that since then. There, the communication era, mate, and we hold it here in our hand. That this next leap, I think that I see coming is that we'll have something embedded in us that is going to be how we communicate.
Well, if Elon Musk has his ways.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a futuristic viewpoint, but no one's going to take phones away from us. No one's going to lock us down there. I think it'll just accelerate with the interaction with people. I just don't think it's the end of it, mate. The bigger thing that plays into some of this, and it's all encompassing, is the impact negatively of health on kids and adults with this is significant. Food
sure is.
So, with food scarcity, I know that, through, Feeding America and all those sort of organizations and the restaurateurs and people that I've become involved with or know, even the Anthony Bourdains and the Tom Colicchios of the world talked about this, is that it's not just the food scarcity, it's what you feed the people. It's too easy to go to McDonald's and get 5 for $5. You can feed a family of 5 for $5 sometimes with 5 Big Macs and 5 Cokes and fries. It's not healthy food. So the diabetic impact of that, the obesity impact of that, this is where we're changing as a society. I mean, three of us here, we're all pretty active in one way, shape, or form, and do things that keep our minds mentally strong. Or if we know that we've got a problem, we address it. The AI, this industrial revolution, I'll call it, the technological revolution that we're going through, is going to create problems for us unless we get a real handle on it.
It already has.
It's one of the sad things here in California. I mean, kids going back to school, that is one thing, but the number of kids that were supposed to be, schooled at home that don't have access to computers or bandwidth for schooling is significant in some of those areas. Yeah, it's easy. I'm in Newport Beach, but go to Compton, go to Watts, go to some of the, it's not just, it's across all creeds, all races. It's Black, Hispanic, Chinese, Islander, the Pacific Islander group. I mean, and white people. I mean, we have an issue. So probably too
scary.
There was one other thing you were going to say, Alex.
There's about 5 million other things I'd love to say. Unfortunately, we are way past our usual time, which we knew we would today. It's always fun chatting with you, Allan.
So. We had a late start to go to.
That too. Yeah, we need to find a pub somewhere.
Hey, listen, I'm pretty close to lining up some travel to the East Coast here that would take me.
Dude, let us know.
Well, seriously, guys, I'll probably go through Atlanta, Orlando, and up towards Cooperstown. So if that's if you guys are going to be around, well, let's figure it out.
All right,
dude, I'd love that. It's been too long.
Yeah, I think that's one of the bad things about COVID, guys, is that what we're doing here is what we used to do when we'd see each other at industry events. And our peer group would probably do that, 6 times a year. And the collaboration of minds and friendship. I mean, I've seen companies emerge out of a few drinks and a steak dinner in Vegas or New York or San Francisco or NADA because minds got together and, shared ideas or situations. And that's what I'm hoping is still going to come out of COVID, is that we'll have this accelerated innovation period. You never let a good project go to waste, and people are going to be pushed to solve problems. To your point, I mean, maybe that's the next conversation we have, is that I'll delve into some of these digital retailing platforms and talk to some dealers and see what's being said out there. But ultimately, you know, I still come back to it is that people like us, unless it's, you know, a company coming in saying they're going to solve a problem for you is not the answer. You've got to have the problem solved internally with the mentality and culture of the dealership. Know that you've got 100,000 people in your database, segment it out, clean it up. What's the, you know, where are they in equity position in vehicles? When's the buying cycle look like they're going to be? Start to engage them so you keep them within brand. And within brand to me means within the brand of the ownership of the dealership. Don't ever let it get to the point. Here's the tip for some of the dealers. Don't ever let someone like me exist. Because, you know, when I've got 200 new sales a month with a partner and we decide to walk out your front door, you're in trouble. And we caused that 3 times with dealerships because people called bluffs on us. We had the relationship with those customers.
Yep.
We were the ones that had the process. We were the ones that were doing the communications and the marketing to them. We never spent a dime on marketing or advertising. I used to write handwritten koala notes to people. G'day, you're buying a car from me, really appreciate it. If I can help you or your friends or family out, give me a call. Cheers, Coop. And I put a little koala pin or a kangaroo pin in and send it out. You know how many people are still sending me those or talking about those? It's that connectivity that you've got to have. And that's what I say, going back to it, Alex, is that's the problem with the dealerships or the opportunity. Build a relationship with your customer base, look after your salespeople, build out a crew that you can build the loyalty and the retention for them. We all talk about customer retention. How about employee retention? Anyways, I know we're long past, guys.
Yeah, if you treat your employees right, they'll treat your customers right.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Coop, always a pleasure. And please, you hit the East Coast, let us know.
Yeah, I will. I'll give you guys a call on Monday or Tuesday and let you know what the plans are.
Sounds great, man.
All right.
All right, guys. Have a great weekend.
See you, everybody.
Cheers. Bye, mate.